shady promoters, 105-degree temperatures, and performers that are hand-battered and chicken fried. Now that's what I call wrestling. Hey there, sports fan. My name is Kit Parsons, sometimes known as professional wrestler Magnum CK, and this is Now That's What I Call Wrestling, the good, bad wrestling show. And this is a very special episode because this show I am calling my birthday episode. It is probably not my birthday as you watch this, but as it's released, it's roundabout or close enough. Listen, I'm 38 now, okay? So there's not a lot to hang on to in terms of birthdays. It's not exactly like pizza parties and pin the tail on the donkey and Power Rangers showing up. However, there are Power Rangers adjacent, legally similar characters to Power Rangers appearing in this episode because we're not going to go back to the World Wrestling Empire this week. We're having a distraction from the action. And instead, this week we're diving just taking one little lateral step to the left because it's in the exact same vein of what we're used to. We are diving into one of my very favorite professional wrestling documentaries that I'm betting a lot of you probably haven't seen. It is called Southern Discomfort. And it is a perfect representation of everything that made me fall in love with professional wrestling. It has some good bad wrestling, it has some bad wrestling, and even some decent wrestling as well. So we're experiencing a cornucopia of different types of flavors of professional wrestling, but more importantly than all that, it is Southern style 1994 pro wrestling, which is just absolutely our sweet spot on this show, as you know. I myself was brought up in the Southern style of professional wrestling as I came up in the early 2000s through an NWA territory, and boy, This feels like going back to a class reunion, just like right back into it. This film actually came out in the year 2000, but a lot of the footage was shot in 1994. It is from Alabama, which is just a hotbed for good, bad wrestling, no matter what decade. I don't see why we should waste any more time. This is our first movie night on Now That's What I Call Wrestling. So get your popcorn, get a hot dog, get a room temperature RC Cola from the concession stand, and sit back, relax, and let's break down and review Southern Discomfort. I think it's always been an interesting thing to call local independent wrestling outlaw wrestling. It's a term from the old territory days where it was like wrestling federations that weren't recognized or designated as legitimate by the governing bodies. This is exactly what I would expect a wrestling promoter to drive, like just perfect. There's not quite enough rust on the side, but he'll get there. He'll get there. So far, the only thing that's unrealistic about this documentary so far is that this promoter is hanging up posters himself. If I know anything from especially my early days in professional wrestling, I was the one out there begging for rides to go around town and hang up posters. The promoter was not running around with a staple gun and hanging up the posters. Is this an episode of Dukes of Hazzard?
This is kind of called wild posting.
Wild posting these days, much different, but it's the same idea. You're putting a message someplace that is probably going to frustrate and annoy somebody and not be well received.
That means you don't ask anybody's permission to put up your paper, but if anybody doesn't like it, they can tear it down. But I'd look for abandoned barns. Got to stay away from telephone poles, though, because the power company always objects to that.
So So instead of going to a local business and asking permission to put your poster in the window, or maybe even working out a deal like, hey, we'll give you 10 free tickets to the show if we can advertise at your business, brother just drives around country roads and finds the side of abandoned barns to hang up signs for his wrestling show, which, by the way, the sign for this wrestling show, if someone walked up to me with that poster, unfolded it and held it up to my face, before even scanning the full document to read what it says, I would ask, how much ransom do they ask for? like this is like clipping pictures out of a magazine and apparently writing a paragraph or 7 on a sign. So this show must have upwards of 17 or 18 matches from what I can tell, and just a lot of information that's very important that you need to know, or else you're not going to be able to figure out how to come to this thing. Also, posting signs on the side of abandoned buildings and barns, like that's his goal. Like that's what he listed as his ambition for the afternoon. What type of clientele are we looking for here? Now, anyone who's watched professional wrestling, and especially like independent and outlaw professional wrestling, knows that there's not exactly a set type of clientele. There's all kinds of different people in the audience. But best case scenario, you put up a sign like this in this location, the type of fans you're going to get, the creepy guy from Dennis the Menace. I would say your key demographic would have to be Sasquatch and his friends. Another key demographic you might be searching for is people who have recently escaped from the local prison.
But the guy does come along, I square him up with a couple of tickets, but the idea is, at least for a couple of days, somebody might see your message.
Okay, so again, like I said, instead of giving a sponsor some tickets to put up your posters in their business legitimately, you're just going to run around, staple this on people's barns and the sides of houses and things you think are abandoned. And then if someone gets mad, then, hey, man, sorry, here's 2 tickets to the matches on Friday. Hope we're square. Actually, hey, that's the wrestling business, baby. That's the way it goes. Don't ask for permission, okay? Ask for forgiveness in the form of $7.50 worth of general admission tickets. Wait, didn't he just say that he doesn't use telephone poles because the electric company gets mad?
Gotta stay away from telephone poles.
So far, we are right on track. This documentary, from what I expect from Alabama Southern Wrestling and what I remember from Southern Wrestling, we're on greased rails right now. Chicken greased rails.
Don't y'all tell anybody you saw me do this now.
Definitely sounds like something an old-timey promoter would tell me and everyone in the locker room.
It's a hot day today, but it'll be a hot time in the gym tonight.
Look, wrestling's fun all the time. Everything's different all the time, everywhere. There's exceptions to every rule. But I have to tell you, just as a wrestling fan, this is the type of show that I would want to be at. And they just don't really happen anymore. And maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. But these people are having fun. Let's just take a look at this audience so far. We have a couple of different ages of children, right? Age ranges. We have someone's probably father here in the back right. We have maybe an older uncle. We have a grandmother here. This was a family affair. Not just that it was a family show, but like families would come out to pro wrestling. Grandparents would drag you to pro wrestling. Like, I can't tell you how many people I know who are fans of professional wrestling because their grandma watched it. Not really the case anymore. I don't know. I don't know what that is. And I'm not going to compare yesterday with today, but I'm just saying, give me a time machine. You tell me I can go to any wrestling show, past, present, or future. I'm going to be in Alabama, whether it's 105, 106, maybe 107 degrees, 108. I'm probably just going to go to a different time and watch like when Teen Wolf won the basketball game or something.
Early in my career, I started out as a wrestler just like everybody else. But, you know, I figured out pretty soon that the guy that had the ring is the guy that always got the work, and he always made money regardless, because everybody in the business knows that if you don't have a ring, then you don't have a show.
Rick Montana is Sweaty. I also love that just like two guys are putting up this whole ring. This is like the worst day of your entire life, right? Like it's 105. You're in a hot gym. There's no air conditioning in that gym. Take a look in the background there at the open air fans. There is no AC in this gym. It's 1994, baby. This building was built in 1949. Yeah, if it was built yesterday. Rick Montana looks like he takes karaoke very seriously. Rick Montana looks like he drives around town with a tape of himself singing over Garth Brooks tracks, and is frankly, in his opinion, probably a little better.
You can always get another wrestler. 8 or 9 years ago, I had a big knee injury, cost $17,000 to have repaired. Me being a college boy, I figured out real quick that it wasn't worth the risk.
Adjusted for inflation, Rick Montana's knee surgery would cost about $36,000 today. So this guy paid the price and is now paying back that surgery in the noble profession, the not the oldest profession, but probably the third or fourth oldest profession, which is ring truck guy.
People keep asking me if I'm ever going to get back in the ring, and they keep saying, really you should, and all this kind of stuff. And especially in these small towns, because, the bad guys come out here and they do all this stuff, and I was always against.
Don't work a worker. Come on, Rick. What are we doing? What kind of seeds are we planting here, Ricky Montana? Also, I love another true life here from my experience as a young man setting up wrestling rings. The promoter just walking beside the guy, not even like the promoter's old. Okay, he's an older guy, but imagine how much easier that would be to carry if you just carried one end of it for the guy. Like the guy could have done that. Right on track.
Good guy, and they say, man, you really need to come out, brother, because we need to help. Because, they think that you're like a sheriff. You're going to come to town and straighten everything out.
Hey, no one in the crowd in any town in America or anywhere in the world thinks that the local good guy wrestler or local good guy former wrestler is the town sheriff. Listen, this is a great time to bring this up because I'm not the only one who said this, but I've heard lots of people say this and I agree. The only people who ever thought that wrestling was real, has always just been the wrestlers or the people in the back, right? Like that's just true. Do kids sit out there and watch wrestling and get into it, and maybe they think, or maybe they get wrapped up in the fact that this live story is playing out in front of them and they believe it and they suspend their disbelief? Of course they do. They don't think TV is real either, but they watch it and they suspend their disbelief much easier than some adults can, right? So like my daughters came to some of my matches years ago. They've been to my wrestling shows and when they were young, our youngest, when she was 5 or 6, she came to a show and she knows the deal with pro wrestling and she still cried when the guy was beating me up, right? They suspend their disbelief. When it really comes down to it, they kind of know the deal. That's the deal with wrestling. People want to believe. They want to play along. But this is a tale as old as time where the only marks, are in the back.
325 pounds like Jack Lord or some of them guys.
It is too sweaty in Alabama. That's it.
If the guy were to fall out of the ring, he's got to go straight to this floor, and it's just a gym floor. Some of the big shows, you'll see padding all around the ring. These guys don't have that benefit. The padding is way too expensive.
The padding is not expensive. The promoter just does not want to pay for it. You do not have to buy padding to have padding on the outside of your ring. You can borrow or rent padding. It's just not an expense that old-time Joe over here would like to incur. This guy's sweating through shirts 5, 6, 7, 8 a day. You think he can swing the extra money to rent some padding for $24? You got a lot to learn about Alabama, honey.
About 5 years ago, I was at a bar and this guy came up and said, hey, do you want to sell your wrestling ring? And I thought, well, guys, sure, I'll sell it.
I am ready to not believe this story already, but I'll go along with it. But I also would wonder how the guy at the bar knew that Rick Montana had a wrestling ring, and I have to only assume the most likely scenario is that Rick Montana drove his ring-loaded trailer to the bar, and somebody came in and was like, who's the guy with the wrestling ring outside? It's what I want to be true. Because the alternative is that Rick Montana's big conversation starter is that he owns a wrestling ring that he rents out. And that's just a level of divorced dad sadness that I can't. It's too early in the episode.
But I figured he was just some mark who came along and really didn't have any money or anything. So he said, well, I want your truck and your trailer and your ring. How much is that going to cost me? So I quoted him a price that I thought would blow him out of the water. He reaches in his back pocket and pulls out a paper sack and starts counting out hundreds on the countertop and says, well, how you going to get home? I'll take a cab, who cares?
So Rick Montana apparently sold the ring that he's setting up right now to a drug dealer. So that's what I don't understand. So you sold the ring, but you still have the ring and rent it out. That's a perfect pro wrestling story. That's exactly a pro wrestling story because it doesn't add up.
I keep trying to get out of the wrestling business. I've been doing this for 12 years. Every time I try and get out, somebody always sucks me back in.
I can tell you another true fact about pro wrestling. I have been involved in many different things, from acting and stage and film to filmmaking to sketch comedy to, the Second City and all kinds of other things, improv, all kinds of things. Nothing has been more of gum on the shoe of my life than pro wrestling. You just cannot get out of it. And I don't know what it is about wrestling. And I guess that's the beauty of wrestling, is that most of us are in some way or another lifers. But man, I listen to a person, everyone who I know in wrestling, and think whatever you want about this, has at one time or another, even the ones that proclaim themselves to be lifers and in this forever, to a person, they have all at one point, if we've talked long enough, mentioned how they love to be doing something else. It is the weirdest thing. But hey, that's why we're all here, baby.
It's called the sickness.
I love this dress. I love the dress casual attire here on Rick Montana. Like, he knows that he's about to do dirty, sweaty work, but brother's got to wear his pleated nice pants and his dress belt because he's a professional. Okay? He's not showing up around here in pajamas or a hoodie or his friend's t-shirt. Okay? He just left his shift at JCPenney and he's here to work.
Well, I'll be over the bar having a drink.
Well, think about it, will you?
My name is Bambi, and I started wrestling professionally 8 years ago, right after I graduated from high school.
Okay, so Bambi is actually kind of awesome. Bambi's like an actual former NWA women's champion and all this, and she's actually great. But that's not what we do here. Sorry, Bambi. Thanks for coming. You're fantastic. Frank Barnhill on the other end.
Some folks think it's the craziest thing in the world, but it's fun for me.
Exactly why we're here. The Flame, picking boogers and flicking them at fans, and is also a local fast food shift manager. That's what we all paid to see.
I began my career 20 years ago this month.
The Power Raider. Don't be confused. Don't think for 1 second that this is in any way any representation of any other intellectual property, okay? First of all, he's a raider, and that's very clearly a motorcycle helmet. So, Your Honor, get a life.
To be a bigger star, be a big Olympic champion.
I also love the locker room having two of the show posters in the background behind the Iron Sheik. Like, who are we advertising to here? I guess this is a high school, so maybe the kids, but two side by side, man. If somebody has a problem with those posters being there, we're talking about lots of extra tickets you're going to have to deal out. So I'd be careful putting those side by side.
When I'm not doing wrestling, I'm bouncing heads off down in Florida and around Georgia.
Big Boss Hoss, very famously from Corn on the Cob County, Georgia. I thought I could do it. I got right to the end. I thought I could do it. If you think for 1 second that Big Boss Hoss is in any way a representation or adjacent or reference to any other intellectual property, first of all, he's a raider. Okay? Secondly, those are motorcycle sunglasses. So, Your Honor, stop asking so many questions.
24 years old. I've been wrestling for about 3 years.
Shane Anderson is 24 years old. First of all, that kid's terrified, rightfully so. But Shane Anderson is 20. Shane Anderson is in this film 6 years removed from high school. The heat in Alabama puts years on you.
When I'm not wrestling, I'm a professional fireman in a big city in Alabama.
Okay, Shanghai Pierce is a problematic figure for me for a lot of reasons. First of all, there's another wrestler named Shanghai Pierce who at this time had moved on to a new gimmick in the World Wrestling Federation by the name of Henry O. Godwin. And that ain't him. We like people's lives, man. Like I have a problem where when I watch things like this or anything, when I watch anything, I just want to pause the world and find out everything about somebody. Like it happens when I'm watching like a game show or like any kind of show like that, or like if I'm watching Supermarket Sweep and somebody's on there and they win, I want to be like, what happened after that? What did you do? What happened in Shanghai Pierce's life, which I don't even think it's spelled right, that as a fireman, allegedly, he decided to rip off someone else's wrestling gimmick on the weekends in Alabama. Like, what do you tell yourself? What do you tell everybody? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing Monday morning? It's just weird.
31 years this October, I'll be in the business. And I got hooked when I was 6 years old.
Bullet Bob Armstrong, unironically one of the best ever. Awesome dude. Had the pleasure of being on shows with him years and years ago. The number one, coolest, nicest guy. They don't make guys like, there used to be a few guys like this in the business that I ran into, and just a pure mensch, just a wonderful dude.
We've got an hour to go before the match begins, and we've sold 225 tickets. So here comes another bunch, right?
I love this guy, just this old dude sitting at a table with like an old Samsonite full of tickets and money. Yes, man. This is what I miss. This is the pro wrestling vibe that I miss. 250, 300 fans squeezed into a 120-degree gym. Creepy, weird old promoter that you probably can't trust or believe, and his buddy with the suitcase full of money at the front. I would say no one's going to get paid what they were probably told they were going to get paid, but it's fun and awesome and smells terrible. The good old days, baby. Take me back.
I just love to see good ones. I mean, you know, Iron Sheik and Bob Jackson.
That guy's shirt is so sweaty that it's more sweat than not. There's one dry area on his right shoulder. The rest is sweat, and we have not even started. Dedication to the craft of being a wrestling fan.
I like to see the good ones. I don't want to see none of these jerks, you know, just off the streets. I mean, I like to see good ones.
Well, bad news, buddy. Plenty of jerks off the street.
Heat probably does make it a little better. Just kind of gets everybody worked up into a lather. Everybody gets kind of worked up, gets screaming, hollering, tearing on like this.
I like that mentality, though, where it's like, listen, if it's hot as hell in there, like if it is hot, if it's so hot that like people's clothes become more sweat than fabric, that's great because it gets them worked up, gets them going crazy, worked up into a lot, going wild out there. And that's what we want. If 16 or 17 fans pass out before intermission from all the heat, then we are doing our jobs.
I used to come when I was in high school, and I guess it's like the ultimate, good versus evil.
I like wrestling because I like people getting thrown around.
We enjoy wrestling. We go whenever we can.
Here's the thing I want to say. There are a lot of people and a lot of shows out there who, if they were to watch this documentary, would make fun of these people, would make fun of their accents, or make fun of the fact that they're wrestling fans, or whatever they say, the reason why they say they like wrestling. And I unapologetically say these are my favorite types of people on the planet. They literally, one guy just coming to the matches because he's been coming since high school, and it's just what he does every month. He just comes down to the show and supports it and has fun. One kid being like, I just want to see people get thrown around. Another, people wanting good guy versus bad guy. Like, Yes, exactly. I'm not saying we can't go back in time. Everything changes. The art has changed, and some of that's really great. But so many people would make fun of these fans, and I just love them. Love them. Would hug them up. If they weren't so sweaty, I'd hug them. I wouldn't. I'm not a hugger. I would I would. If they weren't so sweaty, I'd speak to them in passing. Not even super, not mean, not super nice, but neutrally. That's how much I love them.
It's like you have somebody cheer for it and somebody cheer. It's kind of like life, you know, but it puts it in a little nutshell.
Wrestling is supposed to be a little like life. Someone to cheer for, someone to boo for, someone to root for, someone to root against. Wrestling's kind of like life in a nutshell, he says. Weird. Wild that he would say that, because it does seem pretty simple, doesn't it? Huh.
What do you say?
Garth Brooks shirt, baby. I told you. Yes. I don't know the name of that album, but blame it all on his roots, man. This kid's my favorite. Never say never. This kid is going wild all night, and it's perfect. Although it's unfortunate that seated right behind her is Ichabod Crane. Nasty Steve Lane. I've never met Nasty Steve Lane, but looking at him and combining what I see with my own experiences in wrestling, especially Southern wrestling, but anywhere, okay? And tying those two things together with sense memories, and the strongest sense tied to memory is scent. What I can tell you, based on my experiences, there's not enough Axe body spray to make that smell good, despite how much he tried to use. That's just my assessment. That's just my expert analysis.
I don't know what them rednecks out there, what appeals to them, to be honest. I don't understand. You know, I think it'd be better off if they would just stay home, since you're going to get on that subject, and take a bath every now and then.
I love, that's a trope of Southern wrestling, especially, where it's like you have a guy who's like, well, I came down here and I don't know what the heck and hell all these rednecks are doing down here, and I don't know, they all sound like idiots and they all sound like Southern Hilljacks. It's the best. It's the best, because I love to assume that he has no idea that he sounds exactly like the things that he's making fun of. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with an accent. Like, everyone just has accents. I have an accent of some fashion. Everybody does. And there's nothing wrong with any of them. But it's very funny to hear a stereotypical accent coming out of someone who's stereotyping people with that same accent. It sums up wrestling in a nutshell, like the guy.
But it puts it in a little nutshell.
Okay, this documentary at the very beginning mentioned that this was one night in Alabama. So did he change shirts during his entrance? Or was that black shirt under his white shirt? And I, please God, yes, want that to be true.
I can't even go out the ring half the time. They smell, they don't take a bath, they have no deodorant in their house.
Layers and layers and layers of irony.
Anything I have to do to keep this junior heavyweight championship.
Nasty Steve's a junior heavyweight. What's the weight limit? I'm not even trying to like fat shame the guy, but like, for real, what's the weight limit? Is the junior heavyweight like 235? Then in that case, I just need to drop like 26 pounds and I will be a top contender for the junior heavyweight championship. Thank you.
Because you missing to see one. You missing to see the best it gets, baby.
I like the chess game of wrestling. I like getting in there and seeing what kind of moves my opponent might have.
Wrestling as a chess game. I'm trying to think what level of wrestling you'd have to be referencing to equate it to chess. I would say professional wrestling is more like the Don't Wake Daddy game. Professional wrestling is not a chess game. Professional wrestling is Don't Break the Ice, depending on the quality of the ring, for sure. I feel like checkers would be too obvious. Maybe instead of chess or checkers, we could call it whatever that game is where you have to like pull out the alligator's tooth or whatever, or like the buzzer goes off if you pull the wrong tooth. I don't know why, but that feels closer to me than chess.
Back 20, 30 years ago, it was just either a little man or a big fat slob. And now, up until about 10 years ago, the little man was still in wrestling. And the little man's still there, but he can't compete with a big, strong, fast man.
So what are we trying to say, Shanghai Pierce? So back in the day, it was a little man or a big fat slob, and today the ideal athlete is Shanghai Pierce, who's, I mean, a little of both. Like, he's kind of tall, I guess. What are we saying?
And that's what I am. I'm big. I weigh 270. I'm 6'3".
A few moments later.
Ladies and gentlemen, 6 foot 5 inches tall, 295 pounds.
I love it. I love it that moments ago he said, I'm 6'3", I'm 270, and then we get to the ring introduction and he's 6'5", 295. I don't know. I already forgot. But not what he said before. That's wrestling math, baby. Whatever it is. Add a couple inches. Add 20, 25 pounds. Absolutely. I am 6'6", 291 or 6 pounds because I don't remember what math he used exactly. Nowhere near the junior heavyweight.
He is the one and only NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Shanghai Pierce.
The what now? The one and only NWA Heavyweight Champion, 1994. Negative, sir. First of all, that's not an NWA championship. Also, no, you're not. You're totally not. That's like I know there wasn't like Google and everything back then, and you couldn't look things up as easily. But like any pro wrestling magazine would have had the list of champions, and it ain't Shanghai Pierce. This is the end of the Wild West days of like, you can just do and say whatever you want. You can have Big Boss Haas. You can have counterfeit Shanghai Pierce calling himself the NWA champion. Do you have any idea how many wrestling shows I went to as a child or even as a young performer where there was a variation of Doink the Clown? I mean, hundreds. Like, this is back in the day when you could just do that. When I was a kid, there was someone around town named the Nature Boy Dick Flair. And one promoter booked the Nature Boy Dick Flair against Horace Hogan in a cage and advertised around town Flair versus Hogan in a steel cage at the City Park Pavilion. Those days are so unfortunately gone. And I mean, listen, it's probably for the best, but like, it's fun. I mean, that match probably was not fun. That match was probably terrible, but this is fun. Don't do it. Stop. No, you're 6'3". Are you out of your mind? I love it. He wants so badly to be enormous. He wants it so badly. Hey, you know, you got the 1.5 inch lifts. Just get a couple more inches. Maybe you could get over that top rope pretty easy. Wow, the fire on that lockup, huh? Really shooting it in. Like, man, this is a title match, man. You can tell by the intensity and all the movements that this one's for all the marbles. Oh my God. Like, I love how Nasty Steve almost forgot the spot. Like, he forgot the spot, and as he was coming back, was like, oh crap, and just jumped down really fast. Perfect. Love it. I just want Nasty Steve to do something about that back hair, because he's got the mushroom cloud chest hair going on here from the 70s, and does not need to be taking that bump, by the way. That front flip onto the gym floor, unnecessary, sir. But just, I really want that back hair out of here.
I love the fact that people don't have any idea who I am, because I can go anywhere in this country and do anything I want to, and I don't have to worry about people, coming up to. Sometimes I wish they would know.
I love it. I love the 180 where he's like, man, I get to perform. I get to be the champion, obviously, and I have anonymity. I can go to the store. I can do whatever I want, and nobody knows. But also, I really wish that everybody knew who I was, and I was famous. A pure moment. Pure.
A lot of folks don't know the background of me here, so they just see the Frank that's always good to them and treats them good, and if they ever have a problem, we do that. A lot of them just come in to have a good time and see me and sit down and eat. Business been good. And then when I get over there on Saturday night, I think about all that, and it's all over. Shut up, all you little rednecks in South Alabama!
I love that Frank the Flame is so short. It just makes everything better. He's such like a tiny little cannonball. It's the best.
What you gonna do, you big fat goofball? Like you go like
Another thing I love, the big fat wrestler calling someone a big fat goofball. Perfect, man. That's the lost art of heat. I love it.
This is a senior store, and we have a lot of elderly folks, and they like fresh vegetables. That's what keeps them in good health and everything. So we try to provide them with a good lunch at a reasonable price because they're all on a fixed income.
He just seems like a total sweetheart of a guy. Like, I guess that's the point of this whole chapter of the documentary, but like, I just kind of love him. Also, one thing I don't love, the sparse selection of soft drinks we have back here at Jack's. Not a fan. We've got 1, 2, 3. We've got 4 choices back there. That's 1994, you know. A lot of times people say, and I've said it myself, I've said like, I'm watching a movie or watching something or reading something about like the 90s and being like, man, I wish I could go back and be the age I am now and live as an adult in the 90s. And my wife always says the same thing. She's like, there's a bunch of stuff that you would not be happy about. That soda selection would send me right back to the future. That and probably if it got over 108 degrees.
You see that ground up on man up there? I'm gonna see them right where he's supposed to go to a nursing home.
So the Flames manager is Joey Grieco from Cheaters, which is nice surprise. They just kind of hit you with. They don't really prep you for.
Cook with a conventional oven. This is something I put in because I tell you why. I'm a homeboy and I like cooking fresh vegetables and stuff right here on our oven.
You know what? Look at this. That's what I think of you.
This guy's got to stop flicking boogers at people. Like, I don't think you can. Like, how many boogers does he have going on up there?
We make our own homemade biscuits. Our biscuits are homemade. We make them with a good old biscuit mix flour, lard, and butter. And, buddy, I throw an apron on. I make probably one of the best biscuits you put in your mouth. And the ladies here will just about tell you that.
The ladies here will just about tell you that. Not quite, but they will almost tell you.
Some folks think it's the craziest thing in the world, but it's just fun for me.
It is the craziest thing in the world. I mean, I'm sure there's something crazier, but like wrestling is a pretty weird thing. They're right about that.
What makes a good villain? The audience makes a good villain.
Because I can go anywhere in this country and do anything I want to, and I don't have to worry about people, coming up to. Sometimes I wish they would know. But other times I
tell them that all their whole family's on SSI.
Like, I didn't edit it like that. Like, that's just in the documentary. So right in the middle of Frank talking about, very poignantly, about how the audience is what makes a good villain. Yeah, I understand that. But we just go back to Fake High Pierce and just talking about how he wishes people knew who he was. Okay, listen, I love that clip because it's kind of weirdly pathetic. So play it all day. Like, I'll watch it.
Sometimes I wish they would know.
All you got to dried up diabetes tooth poof. What? So the audience plant, that's like a tale as old as time in wrestling, right? But like weird Frank's entrance, he's just like knocking over his like ex-roommate's friend, his Frank's ex dry cleaner's roommate's friend's cousin's landlord's nephew in the crowd, getting knocked over by Frank from the world's sweetest slap. I mean, Frank doesn't have a bad bone in his body. Chicken bones, maybe. Next week on Now That's What I Call Wrestling.
Sometimes I wish they would know.